book of Hebrews, chapter 10. We will, at some point, I promise you, we will get to chapter 11, but I'll go ahead and say it right now, because some of you will probably wonder or catch on at some point when I'm doing different devotions out of Hebrews chapter 11, and I'm not in Hebrews chapter 11 yet. There's a reason for that. I am intentionally not going to talk directly about the people in chapter 11, as I said yesterday, for the sake of, so we don't focus on it. I think we often focus on the people there as opposed to the message that God's trying to bring across. Every one of these people, they were just like us. They were sinners. They were in need of salvation. Every one of them needed the Lord's help in everything. But they're examples to us. They're witnesses to us, for us, of those that of what you can do for God. Now, the race that Brother Brian runs is not going to be the same as Brother Devin. It's going to be similar. He's called them both to the same ministry, but there's different aspects of it. No matter what comes in Brother Devin's life, no matter what comes in Brother Slater's life or Brother Brian Williams' life, God is able to be trusted in every bit of that. No matter what task God gives you, no matter how daunting it looks, God has examples there to show you He can be trusted. He has the Holy Spirit of God to convict you and to show you, not only convict you of wrong, but can I say this? He convicts us of what's right as well. Yes. He convicts us of what we need to do as well. One of the examples, let me say this. The theme of the book of Hebrews, and I agree with this theme, but I don't think it's the only theme of Hebrews. I believe that it is probably one of the primary themes, is Christ is better. Right. Christ is better. He's better than the angels. He's better, and it gives us a short list of things that Christ is better than, and Christ is better. You can think of the list of the 11 here in this light as well. When they were challenged with problems, with tasks, problems that were bigger than them, tasks that were bigger than them, callings upon their lives that were bigger than them, instead of turning to comfort and to self and backing away or drawing back from serving God, from stepping out, instead of worrying about what others would think or others would say, they looked unto Christ. That's what chapter 12 has shown us. They looked unto Christ, the author and finisher of our faith, and they went forward. And I believe the Holy Spirit of God will convict us that this is what I put in your life. This is what I've given you to do. Now go forward. I think about Moses when he was there, and they're standing there, and he goes to pray to God, and God basically, I'm just paraphrasing here, God basically says, why are you talking to me? I've already told you what to do. Go forward. And I think so many times one of the biggest hindrances is people aren't willing to go forward. It's not that God hasn't told them. I believe there's probably enough pastors. It's been brought up several times about how many churches without pastors. I can't get that thought off my mind of how many churches I've known that are without pastors. And here's the thought I had. God is still calling. I wonder how many churches there are young men sitting in those churches that God has called already. He's the same God yesterday, today, and forever. He's called somebody for those churches. But they haven't stepped forward. Some because they're looking to the world, undoubtedly. Some, it's not because they're looking to the world, they're fearful. Some, they're not looking to the world, they're not fearful, they're not relying on the faith that God has, and they don't have confidence to go forward. And yet He's given us a whole example, and I'll get to some of these different people. Look at chapter 10, verse 31. It says, it is a fearful thing to fall into the hands of a living God. He makes a very serious statement that if you're reading it's not out of place, obviously. But when you read it kind of just hits hard in between a couple of things there. And God is trying to give us a stern warning. Pay attention to what's being written. Pay attention to what I'm trying to get across to you. It's a fearful thing to fall in the hands of the living God. When God puts a call in our life, He expects us to do it. I've never seen anywhere in the Bible where God speaks favorably of them that go for it and then draw back. I've never seen anything where God has spoken favorably of sluggardness or slackness or laziness. I've never seen God deal with it. Now, I have seen God go to those that have done those things and given them opportunity in the Bible to come back, and they have. Many have. And many have done great things. I think Samson's man, I've heard Samson described as everything down to a punk in his behavior, and maybe he was. But I'll say this, when it finally settled in and he realized and he quit toying around, it nearly cost him everything to get to that point. When he did, look what he did. He nailed it in fulfilling what God said he would do. I wonder, could he have done that, could he have done more had he been different? Obviously he could. All right, so in Hebrew, there's a fearful warning, but yet there's a call to remembrance. But call to remembrance the former days in which after you were illuminated, ye endured a great fight of affliction, partly whilst you were made a gazing stock, both by reproaches and afflictions, and partly whilst you became companions of them that were so used. You're not going to be favorable. You're not going to walk through this world favorably because you bear the name of Christ. If you bear the name of Christ, if you remind people of Christian or of Christ, and you bear the name Christian, you are not going to be favorable. Just cast that out. It's not about trying to be favorable with the world. Now, we ought to love them. We ought to have compassion. We ought to do everything. We ought to love them like Christ loved them. But we ought not to let ourselves falter based upon the fact that we wish that they loved us more. I think the love's going to have to come from us greater than from them if we're going to move the needle. If we're looking for the world to love us, it's not going to happen. But if we love them like Christ loved us, you'll see change. All right, so verse 34. For ye had compassion of me in my bonds, and took joyfully the spoiling of your goods, knowing in yourselves that ye have in heaven a better and enduring substance. What we have in heaven can't be taken away. It can't be tarnished. It can't be damaged. It can't be hurt. We ought not to look at the temporal things. That doesn't mean God doesn't want us to have things down here. I made a joke one time. I won't go into great detail about it, but I made a joke about wedding gifts and stuff. They had a wedding shower, and I really was like not interested in going to it. Why in the world would I go to that? That is pointless. But a lot of people got you guys gifts. So I promise you, it will say Mr. and Mrs. on it, but there will be nothing that there will not be the first hunting rifle. There won't be the first fishing pole. Am I right? There won't be the first set of DeWalt tools. There won't be the first set of any of that in there. It will all be things that my wife would like. And I was right. But I joked about the hunting rifle or something like that, and somebody supplied the need for several years, every year for me to buy a firearm. Every year, I knew I knew what they were doing. Every year, money came in, and we were allowed to do it, and I knew what God had that intended for. So for every year, for a little while, I was able to buy a new firearm. Now, if God wanted to keep that going, that'd be fine. Yeah. But if not, that's fine as well. I think God did teach me a lesson. Careful what you ask for. Yeah. Think more spiritually minded. Think heavenly. Don't be so caught up in that temporal. So I can give you all. It's not about those, but set your eyes and your affections on things above, and quit worrying about that. Don't ask and burden people with those kind of things. If you need it, I'll take care of it. Hunting season will be coming up before too long. Every deer hunter that didn't get a deer last year needs a new rifle. If you're a deer hunter, you'll understand that exactly, because you're going to blame everything except for your lack of ability, right? Don't set our things there. We need to set it above. Are you needing a new rifle? Nope. Oh, okay.
I've had the same one for 10 years.
Oh, look at that.
Yeah, okay.
Okay, good deal. He's claiming to be a very good hunter. That's what he's claiming. All right. So anyhow, I got more deer this year with my vehicle than I did with my That's not a joke. I wish it was. I wish it was. I got more deer this year with that. But anyhow, verse 35. Cast not away therefore your confidence, which hath great recompense of reward. I remember when my wife and I were living at the first place we lived was a little cabin. It was 16 foot wide by 32 or 33 feet long, and it had a full bathroom and a full kitchen and closet. So that meant everything else in between was a maze. You had to there was not a lot of room. Not when you have that small. There's not a lot of room left. But I remember when we lived there for several years, and then the church that had the property said, the pastor said, look, we're looking at possibly selling that, but I'm telling the people I'd really rather not, because you guys need a place to stay. And I remember looking at him, I said, Pastor Waldeck, we have lived by faith long enough. Don't rob us of this blessing. The church needs to sell it. Sell it. You put it up for sale and sell it now. God will supply our need. God will. And what happened? God supplied our need. We wound up getting a house. It wasn't a huge house, but it was, oddly enough, my wife and I said, we need the house to be about this size. It's always you need a little bit bigger. You always find you need more space, right? We need about this size, and we would love it to be kind of like this. The house was exactly the way we described it. And when we got there and offered them, when they asked us about it, or when we talked to them about it, they didn't know I was a preacher, because I do my best when I'm dealing with people on financial things to not let that come out, because some people have this crazy notion that if they take care of the preacher, that will equate to getting to heaven, that will equate to salvation. No, there's only one way to be saved. Right. Only one way. But I remember that in not talking to them about it, the price they offered was double what we had. And we could not, at that point, take on a house payment. We just didn't have the money for a house payment. So I told my father, I said, we're going to offer them half. He said, are you crazy? You really expect them to take half? I said, well, I don't expect them to do anything. But I know one thing. I need this. I have this. If the two can't come together, then it just doesn't happen. We'll just keep on going. As I tried to tell them what I was going to offer them, we were going to offer cash and then extra and make payments to them later. And before I could even get that out, I said, we're looking to offer this amount. And the guy said, you know what? I think that sounds good. Let me talk to my mother. I'm selling it for her. I think that might be good. And I thought, shut up. You're not going to have to pay the rest. Just shut your mouth. Don't say another word. I was actually telling myself that. Do not say another word. And they sold it for less than half. And then somebody came along and said, hey, we've been thinking about this for a couple of months, and we just want to pay it off for you. Right. And I thought, man, I wish you guys had come over a few months earlier, because those first two payments were... Those first two payments we had to borrow money to make that from somebody else, and we paid them back, and they just took care of it. So what are you getting at? God takes care of everything. He does it not because he does it to increase our faith, but to build confidence so that the next step, you know that you can rely on him and go forward. Don't get rid of your confidence that God has given you. Live by faith. And everything you do, live by faith. We'll stop there. I promise you I will get to chapter 11 sometime next year. We'll get there at some point. All right. You ready with the verse?